Just a minute, someone's there. Are you ready to go? Okay, we're ready to go.
Hey, good morning. Call the Land Use and Information Committee meeting for March 2nd to order. Notice has been posted in accordance with Wisconsin Statute 19.84 Open Meeting Law. At this time, we'll have general public comments. 3-minute time limit per person. First,
I'm sorry, Nora, just a moment. I have a message that YouTube isn't working.
we have 30 seconds to wait.
Morning.
Done.
Call the Land Use and Information Committee meeting.
Okay, it is now. It must be.
Posted in accordance with Wisconsin Statute 19.84.
Yep, we're good to go.
We okay, one?
Yep.
All right. First, for general public comments. Don Hamilton, are you on?
Yes, I think I'm on. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine, Don. Go ahead.
All right, good morning. Again, my name is Don Hamilton. I live at 7158 South Devils Lake Drive, and thanks again to the committee for recognizing now is the time to open, update, and improve our Chapter 30. I'd like to suggest the committee consider removing manufactured home parks and campgrounds as a conditional use in the RR1, 2, 3, and A2 zoning districts. We know over the past 2 years, only one land use has consistently driven hundreds to voice their opposition to a conditional use they believe will adversely affect them. I think removing it is necessary because time and technology have completely changed campgrounds from temporary overnight stay in a sleeping bag inside a tent into an expandable home on wheels with full kitchens, living rooms, king-size beds, all of that. And today's high-density RV parks create instant communities of 400 to 600 people living and working since COVID-19 from home. And none of these have or provide any tax revenue to support and sustain our police, fire, EMS, schools, roads, refuse, or recycling. Today's campgrounds are completely inconsistent with the county's comprehensive land use plan and more specifically Chapter 30 stated purpose of the RR and Ag zoning districts for limited residential development. These are designed for max profit. They are high-density commercial operations that jam 15 temporary dwellings into each available acre. This density far exceeds every land use density planning tool or design standard Burnett County has. Today, if I wanted to subdivide 10 acres of vacant A2 land, Chapter 30 would allow me to build one residence. However, if I wanted to create a campground, I can shoehorn 150 RVs into that same A2 parcel. From a pure land use planning perspective, how can any reasonable person conclude or resolve a ratio of 150 RVs versus one residence? How can that be consistent with the stated purpose of our zoning districts? What berm, privacy fence, buffer, or quiet hours condition makes 75 RVs versus one residence in the RR3 district compatible? What pet policy, noise, or light pollution condition makes 23 RVs compatible or consistent with RR2? What condition makes 15 RVs in 1 acre of our sensitive shoreland RR1 land that allows only one residence protect our lakes and waters from overdevelopment? It doesn't. Pure and simple, removing campgrounds and trailer parks as a conditional use is needed to stop overdevelopment. Please do not fall prey to smooth-talking developers who are attempting to marginalize this discussion by claiming that those of us who are opposed to overdevelopment are claiming our position just puts cabin owners versus campers, poor people versus rich people, the haves versus the have-nots. This tactic is shameful and hides the fact that these developments add...
Time's up, Don. Thank you. Next for general public comments, Roz Capano. Are you on, Roz?
I am.
Go ahead.
Thank you for your time. Few years dealing with these numerous CUP proposals to expand or create new RV parks in Burnett County. These developers have been relentless in their quest to transform Burnett County into high-density, high-intensity RV parks that negatively impact the general welfare, health, safety, and economic prosperity to the local town, residents, and neighbors to these commercial projects. I am writing to support the proposed moratorium on campgrounds and campground expansions. A moratorium is needed to give the Land Use Information Committee time to revise and improve county ordinances to properly address these high-density RV parks. However, a 4-month moratorium is not long enough to assess the impact these high-density RV parks will have on Burnett County resources. I highly encourage the committee to approve a 1-year moratorium to properly assess the permanent impact these CUPs will have on Burnett County resources and its tax-paying citizens. Again, thank you for your time and service.
Thank you, Roz. Next on general public comments, Mike Jensen. Mike, are you on?
Yes, I am. Good morning.
Go ahead.
As you stated, my name is Mike Jensen. I'm a Burnett County property owner that loves the water and lands, much like all of you do on the Land and Service Committee. I thank you all for your time and talents in serving our county. I know the last few years have been challenging ones for you with the CAFOs and the COVID-19, the development and expansion of campgrounds. I encourage you to place a moratorium on the future campground development or expansions until you're able to address the burdens they're putting on the Burnett County tax base. A recent Star Tribune article led readers to believe that it was a class warfare issue between cabin owners and campground owners and users. I think most of us tax-paying property owners are really just looking for balance and paying for the Burnett County services provided for us that use the infrastructure, the public safety, and the emergency services. Campground users enjoy up to 8 months of Burnett County and its services and only pay 0.5% of Burnett County sales tax on their site rentals and the taxable retail items or services that they use. As far as campground owners, I'm currently paying $392 more annually in property taxes for my place that's on a 1-acre lot with 100 feet of shoreline compared to that of a 16-acre campground with 90-plus sites on it. And I'm not using my property to generate revenue like that campground is. By putting a moratorium in place, it'll give your committee an opportunity to look for solutions to address some of these tax disparities enjoyed by the campground owners and users. I encourage you to vote yes on the proposed moratorium to balance the responsibility for paying the cost of county services for all, and not by putting it all on the property land owners. Thank you again for your time and service.
Thank you, Mike. Next, under general public comment, Mark Krause. Are you on, Mark? Mark?
Yes, I'm on, Norm.
Go ahead.
Community members, I don't know where to start. Usually I do not come before this committee during public comments. I come before this committee usually representing applicants and landowners in the past, present, and future. I have attended many more county meetings and zoning meetings and land use meetings than almost all the members that are present today, except for maybe Craig and Jason. Many hours have been spent after the public has left reviewing ordinances and code changes and revisions to the same. Even more hours have been spent in the zoning administrator's office reviewing plans and related uses based on the county's many ordinances and land use codes and zoning related activities. That being said, I know your job is difficult and I don't envy sitting in your chairs the last year plus. Many contentious meetings have been had and the outcomes have been mixed. Opposing ideas are rarely close to any items in the middle ground and the middle ground does not even get entertained. Derision is rampant and disrespect for the committee and applicants is evident. Outside attorneys are present at most meetings, arguing and creating doubt in all items. I don't like it, and I know the committee doesn't like it either. Thus, wanting to take a step back for a campground moratorium is an option that is to be considered, but looked at for all the reasons, not just a stoppage or slowdown. Now a little history. I grew up in this county with 10 to 12 of my classmates and families owning family-operated resorts. This is 20% of my classes, if from you out of town that might not know that. There were well over 100 resorts in this county in the 70s. Now there are maybe 25, and most of which have survived are associated with campgrounds, RV, or mobile home parks. Where have they gone? Most have been lotted off and sold off and are now non-resident vacation second homes. Eichwalt, one of the last few resorts renting cabins, was recently sold and divided. Where are these outside visitors going to stay? Airbnb and VRBOs? One of the few options remaining are those, and they've become very prevalent and are uncontrolled. Resorts and seasonal rentals, campgrounds, and RV parks have long been part of this county's history and economic vitality and should be not looked at as a second-class neighbor. Many new owners have come to the area and have not been part of this tourist and visitor economy and only look at their own interests. I've got mine, and now I'll pull up the bridge and nobody else can come in. Much of the finger pointing of lake aggregation and various pollutions, runoff issues, and overall use stem from previous owners' excessive and development activities on their own lots. Existing lakeshore and present owners have done most of the damage. When finger pointing, one should also look at the three fingers pointing back at themselves instead of pointing at others for all these problems that they deem exist. Thank you for your time, and I continue to look forward to working with the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Next, under general public comments, Carol Huff. Are you on, Carol?
I am.
Go ahead.
I'm Carol Huff. I live at 22973 County Road M. And I've lived here. I built my home here 30 years ago. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm supporting the proposal that is setting up a moratorium on banning campgrounds for, I guess it's 4 months. And my concern is that I am doing some renovations on my house, and there's lots of zoning regulations and permits, and it's going to go back to, to the county because it's building permit, and it'll increase my tax base and stuff like that. And I'm really concerned that an RV park, from what I'm understanding, they're not contributing. Yes, we need to expand, but we need to look at the bigger picture. I'm a retired nurse, was a public health nurse in Burnett County, and of course, health is my concern. We have COVID now. I also worry about the policing, the fire, what's going to happen, putting all these people, obviously, they're going to be on septic tanks into the water and the air. So mine's kind of a health standpoint thing. And, then I read in the Star Tribune that, Burnett County is, a target place, everybody moved there. And yes, it's great, but I truly think that we have to sit back, take a look, and really look at what is this doing so that we have all our ducks in a row. Once we make the changes and it impacts our water, our fishing, our snowmobiling, all of that, we can't go back. The damage is already done. So I thank you so much for listening, for at least putting this on your agenda. And I support you. And if you have any additional questions, feel free to let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Now, what are you going to do?
Okay, so this is just a reminder that if anyone has signed up for public speaking and you have called in or signed up with a different number than you have called into today, you will not show up on our screen to allow you to talk. So please make sure everyone that is signed up for public speaking is connected with the telephone number that you listed when you signed up. Thanks.
Okay. Next, we'll move on, and the agenda is to approve the agenda order.
Make a motion to approve the agenda order.
Motion by Supervisor Patton. Second by Supervisor Ah. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Approval of the minutes from the February 2nd, 2021 meeting.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Motion by Supervisor Blumberg. Second by Supervisor Conroy. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next, I'll have Jason read the public hearing notice.
Notice of public hearing, State of Wisconsin, County of Burnett, Tuesday, March 2nd, 2020, at 9 a.m. at the Burnett County Government Center in room 165, Town of Meaden, Siren, Wisconsin, regarding the following. Conditional use permit, CUP 2050, Trenter. Public notice hereby given to all persons in the town of Follett, Burnett County, Wisconsin, that Joe Trenter has made application for a conditional use permit for the terms of the Burnett County Land Use and Shoreline Protection Code of Ordinances to operate a home occupation tree service business located at 4901 State Road 70 in the RR1 zoning district, in Government Lot 1, Section 4, Town 38 North, Range 15 West. Conditional use permit, CUP 2102, Gennard. Public notice hereby given to all persons in the town of Webb Lake, Burnett County, Wisconsin, that Scott Gennard has made application for a conditional use permit for the terms of the Burnett County Land Use and Shoreline Protection Code of Ordinances to operate a home occupation sporting goods business located at 30032 Upland Woods Court in the PUD zoning district, Lot 1, CSM, Volume 28, Page 7, in Upland Woods addition to Voyager Village, Section 30, Town 41 North, Range 14 West. Conditional use permit, CUP 2103, Borg. Public notice hereby given to all persons in the town of Scott, Burnett County, Wisconsin, that Charles Borg has made application for a conditional use permit for the terms of the Burnett County Land Use and Shoreline Protection Code of Ordinances to allow a seasonal outdoor storage of up to 70 watercraft located on the parcel with tax ID 18804 on West Benoit Road in the RR3 zoning district in the south half of the northwest quarter of the southwest quarter, and the south half of the north half of the northwest quarter of the southwest quarter, Section 34, Town 40 North, Range 14 West. Conditional use permit, CUP 2104, Jensen. Public notice hereby given to all persons in the town of Lincoln, Burnett County, Wisconsin, that William Jensen has made application for a conditional use permit for the terms of the Burnett County Land Use Code of Ordinances to operate a home occupation furniture business located at 27049 Lee Road in the A2 zoning district in the southeast quarter, the northeast quarter, Section 3, Town 39 North, Range 17 West. Map amendment, MAP 2102, Whiskey River Land and Timber, LLC. To rezone the southwest quarter located in Section 13, Town 39 North, Range 17 West, Town of Lincoln, from F1 Forestry to RR3 Residential Recreation Zoning District. Zoning change requested by Kenny Meyer on behalf of Secluded Land Company, LLC. Details of the proposed revision are available on Burnett County Land Services Department, the County Clerk's Office, Burnett County website. Map Amendment 2103, Whiskey River Land and Timber, LLC. To rezone the northeast quarter, the southeast quarter located in Section 14, Town 39 North, Range 17 West, Town of Lincoln, from F1 Forestry to A2 Agricultural Residential Zoning District. Zoning change requested by Kenny Meyer on behalf of Secluded Land Company, LLC. Details of the proposed revision are available at the Burnett County Land Services Department, Burnett County Clerk's Office, and on the Burnett County website. Map Amendment MAP 2104, Whiskey River Land and Timber, LLC. To rezone the northeast quarter to the southwest quarter located in Section 13, Town 39 North, Range 17 West, Town of Lincoln, from F1 Forestry to A2 Agricultural Residential Zoning District. Zoning change requested by Kenny Meyer on behalf of Secluded Land Company, LLC. Details of the proposed revision are available at the Burnett County Land Service Department, Burnett County Clerk's Office, and on the Burnett County website. Text Amendment TXT 2101, Burnett County Ordinance, Chapter 30 and Chapter 45, Campgrounds. Public notice is hereby given to all persons in Burnett County, Wisconsin, that the Land Use and Information Committee is proposing to amend Burnett County Code of Ordinances, Chapter 30 and Chapter 45, to establish a moratorium on new campgrounds and campground expansions. Details of the proposed revision are available at the Burnett County Land Service Department, Burnett County Clerk's Office, and on the Burnett County website.
Thank you, Jason. First, I'm listening to the public hearing. Conditional use permit 20-50, Trenter, home occupation. Are you on, Mr. Trenter?
No, it's not on.
Mr. Trenter, we've had this before us twice before. None of the times as Mr. Trenter appeared before the committee, we requested that he appear before the committee. He has not appeared. Is there a motion on CUP 20-50? Supervisor Conroy.
At our last meeting, we had discussed this, and I had made a motion that if he did not appear, present at this meeting, that we should dismiss this request. He would need to reapply. Obviously, the violations that Jason has encountered would be up for enforcement as soon as weather permits as well. But if he doesn't appear or doesn't contact us in the course of this meeting, I would make a motion to dismiss this request.
Second that motion.
There's a motion by Supervisor Conroy and a second by Supervisor Patton to dismiss this CUP 20-50. Roll call vote. Mr. Pearson is not present. Supervisor Patton.
Yes.
Supervisor Blomberg.
Yes.
Supervisor Anderson.
Yes.
Supervisor
Yes.
Supervisor Conroy.
Yes.
Supervisor Bickford, yes. CUP 20-50 has been dismissed. Next, we'll go to conditional use permit 21-03. Gennard, home occupation. Are you on, Mr. Gennard?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead. Explain your application.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Go ahead and explain your application.
Oh, so we're what I'm looking to do is get my federal firearms license, and part of the protocol for that is making sure that all the permits are correct with the state, county, and federal governments. Jason's been super helpful getting me through to this point. This is going to be internet sales and by appointment sales, no hours, there's no daily foot traffic, no impact to the environment, cars, trucks, nothing like that. It's going to be very small, and probably looking at 10 to 15 sales for firearms in a month. And I'm looking to, at some point, expand to a brick and mortar. As I get a little closer to retirement age, I'll be 50 next month, so I'm always thinking down the road.
Okay, thank you. Does the committee need another explanation of the application? Supervisor Anderson.
I would like to know, are we going to be testing any of these firearms in that area?
There'll be no discharge of any firearms in this area. It's pretty residential where I live here in Voyager Village, so I just don't agree with that, and neither do my neighbors.
Supervisor Conroy.
Yeah, I'm completely familiar with his location. Right, there's not room to have a shooting range on that parcel. The question I have for you, does the Voyager PU Association covenants of PUD have any impact on you?
You're kind of breaking up quite a bit there, and if you asked if Voyager Village was okay with this, is that what you asked?
Yeah, sorry, take off my mask. Can you hear me better?
I also sit on the architectural and environmental committee for Voyager Village, and at our meeting 2 weeks ago, I brought this up and talked with our president, Randy Szymanski, and our secretary, Linda, and they had no issue with it at all.
That's good to know. We could not have enforced the covenants, but it's good for us to know that they're okay.
Supervisor, I have a question. If not, I'll open the public. Are there any public comments? Have been none registered? So I'll close the public. Do we have anyone who wishes to make a motion on this PUP? Supervisor Conroy.
Yeah, I will make a this request for a home occupation with the understanding, I don't have the staff comments up, but that we've determined that there will be no in conjunction with it. The traffic that he would envision would be someone coming to process the FFL paperwork, would be the only real customer travel in and out of the property. So based on that, I would make a motion to approve.
Have a motion by Supervisor Conroy. Is there a second?
I'll second that. I was just wondering, Craig, as part of the motion, are you going to include follow all sign regulations and follow all local, county, state, and federal requirements for this activity?
Yeah.
So yes, I'd like to second that motion.
Hard to follow this iPad when they got all the cancellations from about 3 months on there. So. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Supervisor.
I was short of seeing anything as far as the PUD is concerned. I would be. I'm surprised that there isn't something in the PUD suggesting work at home or not work at home, actually, home occupation.
I can tell you, without having it in front of me recently, but I worked with Voyager a number of years ago when they updated their covenants because they had to renew them from the original. And they don't allow anything very invasive, let's call it, you know, but they have, their group reviewed what his request was and found it to be within what their covenants allow. I think we can refer to them.
Well, with this last year, COVID, I guess the potential of more and more home occupations increase, and so I would go along with that. I just thought maybe that the PUD would have had something, but
they do. I can tell you, but I can't tell you. For whatever it's worth, I ordered some scope mounts from an operator very much like what he's proposing that I needed and couldn't find, and I ultimately ordered them eBay, but from someone who had 10 models that I was at. I would have searched, I'd put on 1,000 miles driving around. So this is the service that some of us LIFO loonies are probably appreciate.
Any other comments or questions? If not, roll call vote. Mr. Pearson is absent. Mr. Patton?
yes.
Mr. Blomberg?
Yeah.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Conroy?
Yes.
Mr. Bickford, yes. Conditional use permit PUP 21-0 warrant has been approved. Thank you very much. That is making the noise okay.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Next, we will have the conditional use permit CUP 21-034. Mr. Morgan.
Yes, I am.
Go ahead, explain your application.
Yeah, last year I came before your members to try to get a permit to build a couple of self-storage units on Du Bois Road. And Mr. Tim McIntyre was opposed to an entrance off Du Bois Road and wanted it to come off from Benoit Lake Road and plant some trees to hide it. And it was kind of left for him and I to work out the details of how we were going to do that. When we did, we decided that the best solution would be to move the buildings south to the 25-acre parcel where they'd be more concealed And any storage of outside boats would be totally concealed because it's down over the hill and it cannot be seen from Du Bois Road or Benoit Lake Road. So in thinking about that, the ideal place to store my shrink wrap boats was in that area where I do have access off Du Bois Road, or off Benoit Lake Road, and they are not visible from Du Bois Road or Benoit Lake Road. And then they would just be there, over the winter and out of there in the summer.
Okay. Is there any questions the committee would like to have explained before we open the public hearing? Mr. Al, go ahead.
I guess my remembrance of that last application is a little different in that it was, the town chair said they would not allow rezoning and that the entrance had to come off of Benoit.
Yes.
Which we approved. However, in order to have outside storage, we approved internal storage previously because.
Yes.
Okay,
yes. Yes, and I agreed to no outside storage on Du Bois Road there. But by moving it to Benoit Lake Road, it's out of sight, totally out of sight from either road.
It doesn't matter, I don't think, because it's still zoned RR2, and you would need to have it rezoned, and I think the town is opposed to that.
That's why I was asking for the variance as opposed to rezoning it.
Mr. Conroy.
Mr. Conroy. Sorry, getting my thoughts organized. I understand what you're getting at, but that would be what would be called a use variance. And that would not be properly heard before this committee in any event. But a use variance to change zoning is seldom approved by the Board of Adjustment. I'm not sure if one's ever been approved, but you're not asking for a variance, you're asking for a conditional use permit in a district that doesn't allow what you want to do.
Am I asking for the wrong thing then?
I'm not trying to encourage you to apply for a variance because I don't think you would get it. But I think the point I'm trying to make is that outdoor storage is not allowed, no matter if you can see it or not, in this zoning district. That's simple. That was the basis for the denial of that. We approved the indoor storage, but not outdoor storage. Relocating it is a good idea. I think that solves the conditions, but your plan changed to that. But outdoor storage is still not an option in the zoning district that you are in.
All right.
Jason, do you have any comment?
Well, I guess, like I think Craig said, variances would not be granted. It doesn't look like a rezone request would be allowed, or the town wouldn't support it. So I guess the only other option is find a different piece of property.
In order to have that, in order to have outside storage, it'd have to be rezoned. You don't believe the pet town would approve rezoning?
Well, that's what they have, that letter saying they don't support rezoning it.
We have a letter from the town of Scott.
Yeah, I understand you do. I understand that Tim is not in favor of this.
Yeah.
I don't understand why, but I understand he's not.
Yeah.
Well, since we've hashed it over pretty good, I'll close or open the public hearing if there's any comments, public comments. There's been none submitted, so I'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion on the conditional use permit 21-03? Supervisor Ah.
I would move to deny.
Motion is to deny.
Second.
Second by Supervisor Anderson. For denial of this CUP, Mr. Pearson is absent. Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mr. Blomberg?
Yeah.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Ah?
Yes.
Mr. Conroy?
Yes.
Mr. Bickford, yes. The application has been denied.
All right. Well, thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Next, we have conditional use for 21-04 Jensen, home occupation. Mr. Jensen, are you on?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Will.
I'm Will Jensen, owner of St. Croix Custom Furniture and applicant for CUP 21-04. I've been in business for 9 years, operating most of these years out of a commercial building within the village of Webster. But when an opportunity to do something different with my building in town came up, last year we pursued it. And so now I'm seeking approval to operate my business, St. Croix Custom Furniture, LLC, at my residence on Lee Road in Lincoln Township.
Thank you. Are there any questions the committee has to clarify the application? Mr. Conroy?
One question regarding is it just you doing it to work, or do you have an employee or two who with that?
Right now it's just me. In the past I have had one full-time and one part-time employee, but right now it's just me.
I think that, with a home occupation, it's generally presumed it's you or possibly one other person. We don't have a number we use, but it's meant to be a relatively small operation. It sounds like that's the standard that you're aiming for.
Yes. I've dealt with employees before, and I'm not sure I want to continue to pursue that.
Thank you, Will.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions or clarification by the committee? Yeah, my question to Jason is, if it's one employee, then it could be called an extended home occupation?
Yeah, we allow for it to have more than just the owner as an employee.
Right. We generally like to have a kind of a approximation of what it would be.
Yeah, and I think we want it to be a small operation. You don't want it to have 10 employees or something where it should be in a commercial district.
And I did drive in on Saturday and looked, and it's quite a building you've got there, and I would assume that that's what the occupation is going to be done at.
Yes, sir.
If there's no other clarifications needed, I'll open the public hearing. We have no one signed up for public comments, so I'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion on CUP 21-04, home occupation?
I would make that motion to approve this conditional use permit.
Motion by Supervisor Patton, second by Supervisor Anderson.
Question.
Question by Supervisor Blomberg.
Would that motion include the three staff recommendations?
All three.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to include the staff recommendations that have been provided. Supervisor Pearson is absent. Supervisor Patton?
Yes.
Supervisor Blomberg?
Yeah.
Supervisor Anderson?
Yes.
Supervisor Ah?
Yes.
Supervisor Conroy?
Yes.
Supervisor Bickford? Yes. Conditional use permit CUP 2104 Jensen for home occupation has been approved. Thank you, Will.
Thanks, sir.
He'll be sending those. You always send those.
Yeah, we send a written letter to them.
Jason will be sending those out. Next, we have rezone request map 21-02 Whiskey River Land and Timber LLC, rezoned from F1 to RR3. And we have Kenny Meyer. Are you on, Kenny?
I am. Yes, sir.
Go ahead and explain.
All right. Hi, I'm Kenny Meyer. We're looking at developing a 40 in Lincoln Township off of Blackbrook Road and Ostergren Road, right on the corner. Originally, when I went to the town in January, I had an 8-lot plan, but during the discussions of the plan, they felt that the town couldn't allow anything under 5 acres. I had a couple of them that were just under 5, so we revised the layout so all the lots would be at minimum 5 acres or larger. So we now have a 7-lot plan. The reason for the development is to just create some vacant parcels that front on the public road, and they'd be used for recreational and residential purposes.
Are there any questions or clarifications that the committee needs? If not, I'll open a public hearing on map 21-02. We have no call-ins for public comments, so I'll close the public hearing at this time. Is there a motion for the committee? Supervisor Conroy.
Yeah, I will make a motion to approve this rezoning request, finding it to be consistent with the town of Lincoln's comprehensive plan, which notices as rural residential. With the staff recommendation of following all applicable local, county, state, and federal requirements.
Is there a second?
I'd like to make a second to that motion.
Go ahead. Supervisor Blomberg, make a second.
Second.
Any other questions or comments? If not, Supervisor Pearson is absent. Supervisor Patton?
Yes.
Supervisor Blomberg?
Yes.
Supervisor Anderson?
Yes.
Supervisor Ah?
Yes.
Supervisor Conroy?
Yes.
Supervisor Bickford, yes. Rezone request map 2102 has been approved by this committee, and it will be going to the county board for their approval.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to map 2103, Whiskey River, for rezone from F1 to A2. Go ahead, Kenny.
This one is up Ostergren Road, a quarter mile off of Blackbrook Road. And when I brought it to the township, originally we were looking at smaller lots there. And after the meeting, we found out that it was their comprehensive plan didn't allow for a smaller development. So we have revised the layout for 4 10-acre parcels that would all front on Ostergren Road.
Any comments or qualifications by the committee needed? If not, I'll open a public hearing. We have no call-ins for public hearing. I'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion by the committee?
I'll make a motion that we approve this zoning change.
With the conditions?
With the condition. One.
I will second.
Second by Supervisor Conroy.
Let's note that the town of Lincoln is agreeable with 10-acre parcels as forestry residential. Then in their plan, we would say 20 at the county zoning as it is now. So that's just a comment, 10 and no further subdivision, it seems reasonable to me.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Mr. Pearson is absent. Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mr. Blomberg?
Yeah.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Ah?
Yes.
Mr. Conroy?
Yes.
Mr. Bickford, yes. Rezone has been approved by this committee. It will be sent to the county board for final approval. Rezone request map 2104, Whiskey River Landon. Go ahead, Kenny.
Okay, this one is a quarter mile up Higher Road, off of Blackbrook Road, and the same thing with this one. Is the comprehensive plan allows for the larger parcels. So we just have 4 10-acre lots laid out, all fronting on Higher Road.
Any questions or clarifications needed by the committee? If not, I'll open the public hearing. With no call-ins for public hearing, I'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion for map 2104?
Oh. Someone wants to make a motion, I guess.
Is the phone making a motion?
I don't know. Is there a motion by the committee? Supervisor Anderson.
I'll make a motion, we approve this request with the conditions stated by the staff.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Supervisor
Recognizing what Supervisor Conroy had stated about the town there.
Okay, so roll call vote. Mr. Pearson is absent. Mr. Padden?
Yes.
Mr. Blumberg?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Robb?
Yes.
Mr. Conroy?
Yes.
Mr. Bickford? Yes. The map 2104 has been approved by this committee. It will be sent to county board for final approval. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much.
Next. I'm gonna get something. Water or something.
Those beaches go and there's only opposite.
Who is speaking? Who's on the line? Hello?
Hello, this is Mark.
Mark Krause.
Move on. Next, we'll move on the agenda. Text amendment, TXT 210, is it 1 or 2?
1.
How come it's split up?
Oh, typo. Sorry.
2101, campground moratorium. Have Jason explain this.
So this was an item that we discussed at the last committee meeting, that the committee wanted us to put together some language for a proposed moratorium. So you'll see that you have a draft copy of it in your packet here. I guess it's pretty self-explanatory, I guess, I feel, and it matches your 4 months that the committee talked about last time. So I guess if you have any questions, or we have Dave Nordell here too, if you have any questions for him.
Mr. Robb.
This is Supervisor. I just have a question. Before we set the time period, do we want to kind of talk about, just to get a sense of what we hope to accomplish in that period of time, or steps just to make sure that we think 4 months is enough?
Mr. Conroy.
In the moratorium, we provide for a potential extension of 6 additional months if we need it. I'm comfortable with that, because, and I think your point is well taken to discuss it a little bit, so maybe we should each look at what we think it will accomplish. But we have multiple things going on with needing to look at the ordinance. We have the CAFO recommendations of agriculture, which I think we need to deal with, not subject to the moratorium at all, but while we're getting the moratorium going, we can proceed with that. We'll talk about that more later. We need to revisit the entire conditional use process. Applies to everything. You know, campgrounds are the shiny object right now, but conditional use permits apply to everything that we do, that we need to better organize how we find the criteria within the ordinance. So this gives us an opportunity to do that. And we need to, I think, with all of the political, call it pressure, but recognition of what we've been going through with campgrounds, we need to revisit that and look at that. So those are three separate items. The campground moratorium is specific to that. That'll take the longest, I think. But we'll be working on these other things too. So that's what I see to get out of this process. And the moratorium will give us some breathing room, hopefully, to work on how we do this better.
Supervisor Anderson, I think that is right. I think we should try to get in 4 months, and if we need more time. But as we saw today, not only campgrounds are growing, and we need to look at, but home-based businesses that are becoming more and more prevalent up here, and we need to look at those also.
Any other questions?
Have there been any applications since the last meeting we had for campground?
Yes.
What do we do with that then?
They got in before the moratorium, so we have to proceed with them.
On the old rules.
Yep, under the old rules, and we'll have a public hearing next month for them.
Okay.
Mr. Blumberg.
The question has been raised, is 4 months enough for us to do this thoughtfully and do it well? Would 6 months be more appropriate? That was what Mr. Hansen had proposed. I think it was at our last meeting. And I thought that sounded reasonable. He laid out a kind of a timeline that he had developed anyway in his thinking.
Right.
So we've got the 6 months.
Well,
We have the extension. Supervisor Anderson, the extension is in there. If we can't do it in 4 months, we can extend it another 6 months. That would be 10 months. And that's already.
Right. Supervisor Conrad, I think that the discussion was it could be done if everything worked perfectly in 4 months. I'd like to think if we focus on it, we can. But we have that option, and I think if we determine we need it, we'll exercise it. It's a fairly narrow focus, so and we don't have to go through the process that the CAFO committee did to really get into what the issue we've never coped with before is. I don't think this is that, but and how the 4 months will start after the county board, presuming it adopts our. Assuming we recommend the moratorium, the county board will then have to adopt it, and that's when the calendar pages start tearing off. So we're talking April, May, June, July, before we're ending at the 4 months anyway.
Thinking about it already.
Mr. Ross, may I ask Corporate Counsel Grindell a question?
Sure.
When implementing or proposing a moratorium, what are the legal restrictions? Is there like a minimum and a maximum limit to doing a moratorium? Are there a number of times you can extend the moratorium? Does it have to be specified ahead of time, or?
I think you were all at the county board meeting when the discussion of the moratorium regarding CAFO applications took place. This would be the same type of thing. I mean, there is no difference between the CAFO moratorium and what you're proposing at this point. So my belief would be the maximum time limit would be 2 years, because that's the statute that people are trying, or that you're trying to work under regarding cities, is a max of 2 years. I guess that, to answer your question, that would be it.
Is, once you establish it and we say that, okay, it's this period and then 6 months, is that our limit then? Or can we?
Under this moratorium, you either have to, my belief would be, okay, you say you have a 4-month moratorium, you have the ability to extend it for 6 months. I believe you'd have to change your moratorium or issue a new one at that point, because once you issue this, or make this recommendation, if the county board adopts it, you have a document there. Now, I suppose you could come back to this committee prior to the expiration, if you extend, if it's extended, and say, hey, we need more time, we're going to amend this, or you could issue a new one. But I think the max time is going to be 2 years. That, it's all undecided. I think that was pretty clear on the board meeting. There is no case law on county's ability, or construing county's ability. So time limits are the same issue. I reason that if the city only has 2 years, which by then assumption, the village and a town would be under that same statute, I don't see how a county who is really not specifically authorized under the statute would have more authority than those municipalities.
If it's Supervisor with that in mind, then I guess I'm okay with the 10 months as its initial period, the 4 plus 6. So.
Yeah. Supervisor Conrad, my reasoning for not wanting it to be any longer than necessary is the same aspect as Mr. Grindell just talked about. You know, we have to use the least amount of time we can possibly to do this.
Right. This is Supervisor again, but whether we do 4 months or whatever, that doesn't mean we can't come in less time.
No.
Yeah, we can always.
Yes, you could always come and then, you know, end your moratorium at that point once you pass. And if you change anything and that's passed, you can say, we're done. We don't need this.
Any other questions or? If not, I'll open the public hearing at this time, and we have several people who want to talk about it. First one is Joseph Wagner. Are you on, Joseph? What? Not on, okay. Next is Patrick Hansen. Patrick, you on?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Got 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman thank you, Chairman Bickford, and thank you, members of the committee. I want to just express my appreciation for the work you're doing here to put a moratorium in place, and also offer my willingness to help and the willingness of others to be part of this process as well. We've got a lot of expertise and a lot of experience now thinking about these issues and thinking about Chapter 30 and Chapter 45, and we would like to be part of this process. I have been concerned that maybe an unscrupulous lawyer might come before you today and tell you that you don't have the authority to do this, because we seem to have some lawyers that want to tell you you don't have the authority to do anything other than pass their cups and approve and rubber stamp their projects. So I did pass the draft moratorium to 5 other outside lawyers and counsel, just asking what kind of holes could they poke in this, what kind of issues could they see with it. And they thought that the language you've drafted is very good, is very solid. They didn't see any issues. They didn't see any problem with passing this moratorium as formed and as you've written it. One of the things that's really important to note is that this is a campground moratorium. So it's very specific, very narrow, and you all have all been very clear about that. This is not a development moratorium, which would be constrained. So you're not putting a moratorium on zoning, rezoning, or applying it or approving a subdivision. So this is entirely within your authority, and I'm happy to see you act on it. I do want to maybe speak briefly to the comment that Mr. Krause made early on. I appreciate the fact that he's open to and seems supportive of the moratorium as well, and that he wants to have everybody come together and be part of that process and discuss things. I think that points to needing some time. 4 months might be the bare minimum, but if we really want to have a sincere discussion of varying viewpoints and come to some middle ground and come to something that's workable for everyone, then I think you're going to need more than 4 months. But that's just my view, and I've expressed that in a couple different ways. He also mentioned family-operated resorts, that there used to be over 100 of these, and now there's maybe 25. One of the things I'll just mention about that, we had a family resort on Bigwood Lake. It was Forestwood. Some of you may be familiar with that. That was sort of a boarding home style resort, and had capacity for maybe about a dozen or so individuals to be guests of that resort. That is a very different thing. That is representative of what was probably historically throughout Burnett County. So you would have had maybe a capacity of 1,500 or so individual folks who could be at those resorts, historical resorts over time. That is very different from these high-density RV parks and campgrounds that are now being proposed and crammed into much smaller acreage lots relative to residential development. So, you know, we've got over 1,800 RV spots today, and if we are approving them in blocks of 150 to 200 or more at a time, we are quickly going to exponentially outpace anything like what those historic family-operated resorts were like. So thank you again for your time.
Next, we have Terry Bryant. Are you on, Terry?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Terry Bryant. I'm a full-time year-round resident of Burnett County. I pay taxes and I vote in every election. My family first came to Burnett County over 60 years ago, and over the 60-plus years my family has been here, we've seen many changes. I'm here today to fully support the moratorium on campgrounds in an effort to carefully consider what could be the next big change for Burnett County. It's very important to take the time necessary to carefully analyze what's best for the health and safety of all of this county's residents and visitors, its amazing natural resources, as well as its limited fiscal resources. While it may appear that Burnett County has been blessed with an abundance of natural resources, the reality is those resources now hang in a tenuous, delicate balance that could easily and quickly deteriorate. Just look what's happening with the spread of invasive species in our lakes. We need to find the balance that allows for enjoyment of natural resources while at the same time protecting them for future generations. We can't be short-sighted. This is by no means an easy task. An increased number of temporary transient visitors to this county will also burden already strained public services. Which services need to be expanded and how will we pay for those? But we shouldn't speculate what the impact will be. We should do the research to really know what the impact will be. Is the increased interest in camping a short-term anomaly that rose out of travel limitations brought on by the pandemic, or is this the start of a positive long-term trend? I remember another apparent recreational trend that swept through the state of Wisconsin back in the 1980s. Small, independently owned water parks were once all the rage. Not the mega parks like you find in Wisconsin Dells. These were small parks with one or two water slides. These small water parks claimed they would attract more visitors to the county, attract more revenue, more. Sound familiar? In fact, one of those parks briefly operated just down the road from here. I think it was open for 1 or 2 summers and then it closed, and the slide sat abandoned for decades. This moratorium will help the county make well-informed decisions about future expansion and the changes in county services that will be needed to support appropriate expansion. Decisions that can result in viable investments, respectful of the community and the environment, not creating abandoned eyesores, and decisions that truly are in the best interest of the people who today fully support the county, as well as the full-time, tax-paying, voting county residents of the future. Thanks for your time and for your careful consideration.
Thank you, Terry. Next, Don Hamilton. Are you on, Don?
Yes, can you hear me, Norm?
Go ahead. Kind of scratchy, but go ahead.
Well, good afternoon. How about now? Is that better?
That's better.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank the committee. We appreciate your efforts and applaud your willingness to discuss this moratorium. I, too, support the moratorium, and I as an individual who lives in Burnett County, I look forward to participating, and I hope that the length of the moratorium that you decide on will be long enough to allow public in-person meetings. I know this COVID-19 has been a challenge for everyone, and you guys have done a great job making these meetings accessible and open to the public, but it is far from ideal, and I do hope that as we navigate and come to a reasonable conclusion on this particular moratorium, that the time and the vaccine will allow people to come together in an in-person meeting and sit down and discuss the pros and cons of the future for Burnett County. Lastly, I also support the effort to update our Chapter 30 and Chapter 45. Again, like Mr. Hansen noted, there's a number of us that are interested and educated on the ordinances, zoning, and we stay on top of, decisions regarding land use, and we really want to keep this discussion specifically as a land use planning discussion and try to improve our land use decision-making process and the tools that we use to ensure we have smart growth and smart development in our towns and in our county. So thank you again for your time. Thank you for considering this moratorium. Again, I look forward to participating and hope that members of the public will be allowed and encouraged to help you navigate this complex issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Don. Next, we have John Best. John, are you on? John?
Hello?
This is John. Go ahead.
Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, sir. Good morning, committee members, and thank you for the opportunity to speak regarding the campground moratorium. I would first like to acknowledge and thank the committee members, staff, and specifically Jason and Juana for all your additional efforts during COVID. My passion for this topic was ignited approximately 8 months ago in a conversation with Jason, getting a full understanding of CUP applications, the process the committee goes through, and the role the public plays. I was amazed at this process, disappointed, and was an eye-opener in many ways as I feel this process could be greatly improved. I am a risk control analyst for a major brokerage firm, and there needs to be checks and balances in everything, from large companies to small businesses, and can certainly be applied to this county. In its simplest form, I ensure that our processes and procedures are in place to protect our company and ensure they cover bases on a variety of fronts. There is a need for an evaluation and analysis to ensure the health, safety, and welfare of the environment, wildlife, community, and economic prosperity isn't in jeopardy by recklessly approving campgrounds. There needs to be much further scrutiny on these large-scale CUP applications from an environmental and economic perspective. We need to make sure we have an appropriate balance in the county, and considering Burnett County is third out of 72 counties in Wisconsin in campgrounds per capita at 11th per square mile, illustrates the scale is tipped. Just like the county involved and has adapted to COVID, the county has the ability to change the process in applying and the manner in which you decide on approving CUPs. Respectfully, your jobs aren't to check a box and make sure the applicant has fulfilled that. That's why it was the perfect time to tighten up the ship, so to speak, and clean up the process. For example, Jason mentioned in October meeting minutes of drafting a checklist for larger campgrounds, which is a great idea. There's discussion of forming a subcommittee to assist, which is a great idea. I think it's a great idea for all committee members to visit the site, individually of course, to gauge actual landscape size and perspective. Photos can be manipulated by angles and doesn't always depict reality. All applications and presentations need to be accepted 2 weeks prior to meetings, allowing the public and members to review. This will ensure you have the proper time to research the information provided and to make sure you have the accurate information to make decisions. Furthermore, why do we have to have an immediate decision by the members, as if these CUPs carry significant potential of irreversible damage to the county? Why can't the county ask for environmental studies or proof that this will benefit the county from an economic perspective? It seems like wish lists are submitted, but doesn't contain the information needed to give the ideal confidence in your decisions. This is a great opportunity for the members to utilize all the passionate taxpayers who have been continuously working with the county and voicing our opposition for campgrounds. I speak for myself and can speak for others when I say put us to work. What information do you need? And we will track it down. We have many professionals in many walks of life that can help. We do have water experts, we do have realtors, we do have business owners, and we do have a ton of knowledge through our profession and research you can utilize to help make modifications going forward. Do you want us to illustrate that 6% of the sales tax is sent to Madison? Do you want us to prove that the campers actually don't spend as much money in the county as you think? I'll literally conduct interviews.
Time's up. Thank you. Next, we have John Day. John, are you on?
I'm here.
Go ahead.
I'm here. Good morning. Thank you for your time this morning. I am here to voice my support for this moratorium. At the Holman's Cup hearing last summer, I brought up Wisconsin State Law 79.11, Item 1, that limits campsite occupation to 8 out of 12 months. And after reading that code to the supervisors at the meeting, they turned to Jason for his opinion, and he said basically the Department of Agriculture was not interested in enforcing that. At this time, they were more focused on food safety. So I submitted an open records request to the state to get the background on the law and found out that the campground code was revised in 2015. They had statewide hearings and public input, and they had their reasoning listed here behind the code 79.11. It says campsite occupancy. Under current practice, the department allows a camping unit to be located on the same campsite for up to 4 continuous months in a 12-month period. To provide operators with more flexibility in renting campsites to seasonal campers, the department proposes to allow camping units to be located on the same site for 8 months in a 12-month period. It goes on to say, a campground, by definition, is for temporary overnight use, not for use as a full-time permanent residence. This requirement helps operators by assuring that campers do not attempt to establish a full-time residence in their campground. So you can see what we are having happen all across Burnett County is not designed to be in the campground code of the state of Wisconsin. There's nowhere in the code that you can find anything that even remotely allows what we see going on here. I toured a couple of campgrounds this winter on winter days, and you'll see campers are being used all over the place year-round. That's not the design of the state code for campgrounds. So I think there is a worthwhile time here for a moratorium. The campground developers could petition the state for a change in the rules to accommodate their business plans. In the meantime, I think these things need to be put on hold. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, John. Next, we have David Graham. Are you on, David?
I'm here. Thank you. I appreciate the time and your service, and I'm speaking in support of the proposed moratorium. Because of the numerous important issues which need addressing, I would favor a pause of at least 10 months. Everything from the process of applying for and approving CUPs to how the campgrounds are developed and supervised needs to be reviewed. The following are just a few issues the committee needs to address. The application requirements are too limited and easily manipulated. Applicants should have to address more specifically the impact of increased population density on traffic, lake and trail safety, the environment, general peace and enjoyment of the entire community, and the operation of the campgrounds, to name a few. Too many times plans change on the fly while those impacted have no way to voice their concerns or have to guess what the development is actually going to look like. The type of structures or campers that are allowed in campgrounds is ill-defined. The campgrounds have become cheap spots for seasonal homes and are not truly campgrounds. Under the current system, the county and the taxpayers are subsidizing the campers and the operators and bearing the burden of the increased population. The county needs to decide if such subsidies are equitable and reasonable, especially when the vast majority of the money enriches a few operators. The committee should develop a more robust and fair way to gather information and conduct meetings at which CUPs are approved. Currently, applicants are allowed to interact with the committee, make legal and factual claims without rebuttal from the public, and be represented by counsel, while opposing parties do not have such latitude. This imbalance leads to decisions based on inaccurate information and representations from applicants. The committee needs to address issues related to how and where the campgrounds are established. That is, there needs to be more consideration about the impact of the surrounding area and how development of campgrounds may or may not be consistent with comprehensive plans. Thank you for your time. We're at a inflection point in the development of Burnett County. We need to make informed decisions going forward, and the moratorium is a great chance to do
Gentlemen,
that.
up to this point, you have been viewing previous sessions, our legislative team, as well as our interaction with the Governor, Association of Counties, Matt Shea.
Thank you, David.
Yep.
Next, we have Heidi Ulrich.
Session Q&A. I want to thank
Right
our,
on.
quite frankly,
Next, we have Karen Cruz. Karen, are you on?
I am. Good morning.
Go ahead.
My name is Corinne Preuss. I'm a property owner at Tabor Lake in Danbury. I find the characterization of class warfare made by Supervisor Austin in the recent Star Tribune article to be not at all useful. It's an easy buzzword that will always get more attention than a thoughtful discussion about zoning, such as you are engaged in. I'm with you guys. I don't have a problem with campers or people who own RVs. I'm concerned with unchecked development that takes advantage rather than shows concern for the community as a whole. Burnett County has done an excellent job of planning for a future that is sustainable and workable for most all who live here. The campground development has gotten out ahead of all of us. I support a campground moratorium and trust that you will do the same. Thank you for your consideration to expand duration. And I seriously thank you for your attention to these issues and for your service. These are complicated issues that will require hard work. There are a number of us who are available to assist. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen. Next, Steve Pearson. Are you on, Steve?
I am, Norm. I had some sound difficulties the last time, so I want to make sure you can hear me okay.
Hear you fine.
Great. Hi, I'm Steve Pearson. I've been a full-time resident of Burnett County for the past 42 years. I was the town chair of Oakland Township for 6 years and chaired the original Comprehensive Land Use Committee here. First, let me say, like others have said, I am grateful for the thoughtful approach you're taking to this contentious issue of campground development in Burnett County. Your dedication and service on this committee are greatly appreciated. I fully support the idea of a moratorium on campground development to make time to review appropriate siting and scope for these kinds of operations. It's clear looking at established campgrounds in the county, especially those on lakes and rivers, that they more closely resemble subdivisions with their many permanent and semi-permanent structures and features than they do campgrounds in the traditional sense. Some of the residences in these developments look more like cottages or cabins than portable camping vehicles. Besides being an end run around zoning criteria for waterfront development, this puts more pressure on our water resources than was ever envisioned when campgrounds became conditional uses in recreational districts. In addition, citing campgrounds in zoning districts where full-time residents are held to stricter standards and pay much higher taxes than campers creates resentments and an overall sense of unfairness. So the purpose of a moratorium would be to allow time to give meaningful consideration to where we want to go from here as pertains to this particular kind of land use in this county we all love. Once you build these campgrounds, there's no going back. So we need a plan that promotes sustainability of our precious resources and supports development that is consistent with the comprehensive land use plans that have been enacted by local townships and the county. And we need to promote economic development that is broad-based and doesn't concentrate wealth in the hands of a fortunate few. That kind of plan would win the support of just about everyone. As I mentioned in my comments last month, I would propose removing campgrounds from conditional uses in residential and agricultural zones where residents have made it clear they don't want them. Instead, allowing them as conditional or permitted uses in commercial and industrial districts. Memory Lake Campground in Grantsburg and Eagles Landing Campground in Danbury are two examples of how this would look. Both share many advantages, including proximity to emergency services, walking distance to bars and restaurants, and numerous recreational and entertainment opportunities nearby. Campgrounds in commercial areas would provide a needed boost to our local economy, revitalizing our villages and giving campers an opportunity to sample.
Thank you, Steve. That's all we have? That's it. All we have for public comments on this. Is there any? Close the public hearing. And is there a text amendment TX 2101 campground moratorium? Any comments, questions from the committee members?
Do we need a motion for this text?
We'll have to have a motion to approve going to the county board, because this will be taken up at the county board if it's approved.
I'll move to approve.
Motion by Supervisor
Second that motion.
second by Supervisor Patton. We'll have roll call vote. Mr. Pearson is gone, absent. Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mr. Blumberg?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Roth?
Yes.
Mr. Conroy?
Yes.
Mr. Bickford, yes. The text amendment TXT 2101 has been approved and will be sent to the county board for final approval. This is for a 4-month moratorium with the possibility of extending it 6 months. So additional 6 months. That all that used to have on that, right? Is that okay, Jason?
Yes.
Okay. Next, we will move on, unless you want to take a short break.
Yeah. We'll be back.
Take a short break. We'll be back at 10:30. 10 minutes. Give or take. Thank you for coming down, David. Yeah.
Yeah. She just didn't answer.
No, I thought she talked.
No, she didn't talk.
She was on the list, but she didn't speak.
Okay. She didn't answer when I called her. Pretty good, and you? Good. Getting by. Was running a little later this morning, but caught up just in time.
I thought maybe you did like my first meeting, thought it was 9:30 or something.
Well, I did for a little while, and that's why I got in between. Because the one reminder that comes across still says 8:30, and my next reminder says 9 o'clock.
They're not there.
It was easier when they were all the same. Well, actually, it's worse before. Land use and infrastructure were both there.
Oh.
Yeah, so we had 2 of them at 9.
Not ready.
Got his mask on, huh?
It's got its mask on.
It's being safe.
Hang on. Oh. Okay. You're ready.
Okay. 10:32, we'll reconvene the Land Use and Information Committee meeting for March 2nd. Next on the agenda, discuss Chapter 30, changes related to items from the Large-Scale Livestock Study Ad Hoc Committee. I believe that's on our iPads.
Yes, you have all of chapter 30 in your iPad, I believe. It starts at page 111. So this was, Craig and I sat down a couple weeks ago, I think, talked about some of the items that were recommendations from the Large Scale Livestock Committee and that affect the land use ordinances. So that this committee is going to look at those items. So we have some highlighted changes, things to look at here in chapter 30. I don't know, Craig, do we just go through and highlight it with each one, or what do you want to?
I think this is the very, very beginning of it, but we want the committee to start to look at these things and start to think about them a little bit. I think this is going to be real difficult for this because we already had recommendations brought by LSLS, and we're implementing those, and they're not of great extent in zoning. And Jason and I will continue to work on some more draft language to where we go from here. But just to run through it sort of quickly, if you're on, say I'm on about 120 of the packet, and on page 118, we simply note that we're going to delete a district from that chart. That there may be a couple of definitions we just determined to add down the road, but we aren't there yet on that. But like on 121 is where we really start when we get to the exclusive ag district, where the amendments will start to happen. On 122, Jason has highlighted the general farming in blue, and we need to look into that a little bit. And you may know in that we have 250 or less animal units are permitted, without nothing extraordinary at all. We need to look at that a little bit. Jason's put some of the 9102 inserted. We wanted to make sure that we're consistent with that, the bottom of that page. And on to the next page at 123.
We're up on, pardon? On that 9101, where does CAFO, where does the CAFO lie there?
That's just, we're wanting to make sure our statute references are current or appropriate.
What does that mean? Livestock, keeping of livestock, is that what CAFO is?
Yeah, well, CAFO is a concentrated animal feeding operation, right? And so when we looked at why we were talking about less than 1,000 animal unit or the 500 animal unit where our siting ordinance starts, is that we can't just say there aren't any regulations if you're less than 500 animal units. And this exclusive ag ordinance was developed that and it's applied throughout all of our ag districts. It was just A2 and A1 and A4 all referred back as in the ag district. But in the end game here, to limit operations of 500 or more animal units to exclusive ag means we have to go back and define some things in A, and then make some other changes in A2 and A4 to cap animal units at 500. But we want to treat all agriculture under 500 animal units the same. And by so doing, we want to make sure that the nutrient management plans are appropriate, that the 590 plans are sound. You know, all of the other things that we would be doing in the signing ordinance alone, we will need to, because the signing ordinance can only really apply in its entirety to 500 or more animal unit operations under the state law. Zoning is going to kind of pick up the slack below 500 animal units when someone is seeking to expand, but up to 499, for example. They wouldn't be compelled to be regulated under the signing ordinance, but the provisions of the signing ordinance could be done as a conditional use permit, as it would be now, frankly. You know, right now, we regulate by conditional use permit 250 or more animal unit operations. Anyway, that's what the ordinance currently says.
But the question I have is, where lies in there is livestock can mean anything from poultry to pigs to cattle to anything.
Right. There's some interesting exclusions. You know, like deer. You know, camelids. You know, llamas and alpacas and various things are listed. Deer are regulated differently. You know, we've looked into some of that. Some of that is all in the siting law, and that's why we threw in some of the aspects of 91, all the things that are included, defined as agriculture. You know, that's just kind of a point of information. We need to be consistent again with the state statutes.
But it even can include a large horse farm of over 500 animals.
Okay.
Horses, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. All of it, what was really going to shake out of this is the nutrient management has always been required. The difference is an existing operation is going to be, unless we offer cost sharing for implementation of conservation practices, isn't compelled to do it unless but if they expand, they are. And so this is how to catch those expansions. Now, having said that, we tend to have relatively small producers or really big ones. That's probably the future. The middle is sort of vacant. You know, that may change. That would be good if it changed based on like the Wisconsin Farmers Union and other recommendations are in favor of more smaller farms. But there's also the scale of economy of bigger operations. As you may have heard at our last county board, Dwayne Johnson was talking about, that we have a handful of other dairy operations that are on the cusp of being a CAFO. And keeping a couple more cows might be all it would take, if you know what I mean. And we're talking about that in the siting ordinance, and we're talking about that down the road in some rezoning. But anybody who's operating now in A2 that is more than 500 animal units is going to be grandfathered in, just like any other zoning act. We aren't going to say they have to drop below 500 animal units. If they want to expand, though, they would be looking at rezoning to A, to go up to CAFO if they aren't already a CAFO before we get this amendment process done. The only dairy CAFO we have in the county right now is in Wood River, which is unzoned where they are anyway. But Odin down in Roosevelt, which is all the ag land in Roosevelt is zoned A2. He's a couple cows short of a CAFO, and is probably going to go up. His kids are, still running a farm operation. They will no doubt expand in the not too distant future. Crosby's may be in the same exact situation in Dewey. So we're no doubt going to see some dairy CAFOs. just as nobody noticed, paying attention to what's going on in Polk County, that they tried to differentiate between swine and other CAFOs, which you cannot do. They were, the Department of Ag, Trade, and Consumer Protection basically said you have to treat all CAFOs the same. There's I think, a perception by a lot of people that dairy CAFOs we're kind of used to that. We're not as disturbed by them as we would be by swine, but that's just an observation. But the point of this is that these are the things that we're going to have to look at, and just to kind of run through them, quickly. On page 20, what is it? 124. We're highlighting in blue that 250, more than 500 or more animal units. That number we may lower that a little bit with recommendation from Land and Water, but we're still wrestling with how many that should be to trigger our conditional use permit.
Right. Yes, Supervisor, I have a question. I keep seeing references to the citing ordinance, and you keep talking about the citing ordinance. Do we have a citing ordinance?
Yes, we do. We do.
In our current ordinance?
It's in section, it's in 18 on the County Code of Ordinances.
Okay.
Livestock. I might even have a print copy. I can
look at that. Great.
And the citing ordinance is actually a pretty relatively recent, 2007, I think.
Yeah, it's somewhere around there, I think.
It's fairly, compared to some things, fairly modern, but it needed to be updated anyway. And the need to tighten down on some of the processes for but you know what I should have said, by the way, Supervisor Roth, the major recommendation of the LSLS committee was to limit large operations to exclusive ag. Burnett County has about 130,000 acres of A2, 30,000 acres of A. A is where the best farmland is and where the bigger farms are. So by limiting it, let me back up. The other aspect of Burnett County is about 80% of it is less than 20 feet to the water table. And the targeted nitrate standards that DNR is working on will, if adopted as proposed, and because it's nitrate, which is a protection action limit in potable water, it will, I suspect, be adopted as it's being proposed, would limit winter spreading and fall spreading of both liquid manure and fertilizer in the targeted areas where you have highly permeable soil or impermeable soil sloping sites and high runoff. That's, Burnett County is a poster child for those kinds of conditions. So limiting really large operations in areas that have really fragile soil and don't really have the land base to support that is a reasonable thing to do. And that's what our council from the LSLS committee believed, that restricting large operations in A2 is appropriate. And we will be probably rezoning some A-zone land isolated parcels out of A2 down the road here. Again, part of the recommendations. But the first thing we need to do is address these cleanup ordinance language processes that we are following the recommendations. Jason and I decided to throw out in there that it appears that a gravel pit's not allowed in A. But kind of because, we may see a site, we have some A2 land where there are active pits, but if they were seeking to rezone to A, we might not be able to do that. We might want to look at that. Another significant thing is in 3119 conditions attached to conditional uses. We, as we have done in the past historically, have a paragraph of all the things we might do when we approve a conditional use permit. we've been advised that we should do this in all conditional use permits, not just ag, but we should enumerate what those things are. A checklist, if you will, for the committee, the applicant, anybody opposing, to be able to identify what these things are that have to be satisfied. And we may expand that list a little more as we develop this language, but that's a biggie in my mind. If we go on to, we also have standards for rezoning. Which pertains to the A district and will pertain to the A4 district because it's eligible for farmland preservation. We also have an overlay district that applies to A2 that's participating in farmland preservation that essentially restricts it to the same limits that the A district has. Try to get conflicting uses from happening there. I went overshot something here too. Back on page 123, section 3117, conditional uses. We didn't highlight that, but the point of it is those particular conditions that need to be considered in approving a conditional use in the A district should also exist in A2 and A4. Because there's some useful, good language there, partly because it's newer than the language elsewhere. You'll come to page 126, you'll see we're deleting that entire A1 agricultural district. The reason is it was intended to be in a transition area between urban and rural. And the only place we have any is in the town of Rusk, which is as far as you can get from an urban area and still be in Burnett County, right? But it has never been used the way it was envisioned. If the lands in that district would be better served being either A4 or A2, or A, but not A1. So, and it's a very limited extent. And
so delete it now, but then bring it back if and when it needs to ever be needed.
It could be left, if it ever became appropriate, sure.
Yeah, I'll bring it back.
But for now, we looked at it and we also briefly wondered if we needed A4. Okay, but when we get to A4, the thing about A4 is it's called an ag forestry residential district, but it's real low density. Some of the people in the county who are zone A in isolated places, Oakland, Swiss, a couple other places, 40 acres, 60 acres here and there, zone A, mixed in with A2 or RR districts. It really isn't what it should be. Probably, if you want to have it limited to real low density, A4 is probably better. There's a area in Swiss north of Highway 35, abutting the town line with Blaine, west of Highway 35, that is zoned exclusive ag, quite a big tract owned by Olson. At least half of it is forested. It isn't even open ag land. A4 would probably be the ideal district for that. Obviously, the property owner would need to be on board with the rezoning. By rezoning into A4, the cap for animal units would be 500 in that district, which is still quite a few animal units. It isn't that you can't farm, but it's probably more in keeping with what the surrounding land use is and what is best for that. And frankly, it would keep a CAFO from locating there, which, right in the watershed of the St. Croix and right on in an area of high value recreational properties probably would be really unpopular besides.
How would an A4 relate to those rezones we did today? The rezones from forestry to RR and forestry to ag.
Well, we were in an area where there's A2 adjoining. A4, I see A4 being used to transition where exclusive ag, because A4 is equally eligible for farmland preservation credits but is more in keeping with the isolated ag land rather than large tracts of ag land. I think A4 would just be a more meaningful district to use. And I don't see any real, let me put it this way, the land base, even where that isolated A is, there isn't enough land there to support a CAFO for the volume of land necessary for land spreading manure and whatnot. Maybe a turkey one where you truck away the solid manure, and there's turkey waste, dried manure is a lot more transportable than liquid manure, obviously, right? The liquid manure from dairy or swine operations, you have to be reasonably close to the source to be able to disperse it at the low loading rates. The soils up in those areas tend to be highly permeable, so they'd be under the targeted standards for lower application and no winter, no fall spreading. You know, it's kind of a big picture issue.
Did I misunderstand before I got a sense that you were proposing to limit the large CAFOs to ag exclusive?
Right.
Or exclusive ag?
Right. Right, that's
so
my point.
So the A4 wouldn't, I mean, they wouldn't qualify.
A4 would not be, it would be one of the restricted districts, because it typically would be where there's highly permeable soil and limited amount of ag land. But it would, the reason it's not A2 is that some people want to keep that minimum 35 acre low density component to, you know, to maintain the space to do agriculture, and it's certainly fine. You know, it's a swap out for a similar district, except for the 500 animal unit cap. Did that answer the question? Mm-hmm. Okay, so and I'm trying desperately not to confuse or bore everybody to death, but I just want to get your attention to what we're working on so you understand the background. Yeah, you can always call or email me anytime. And we have some references back to 3120, 3119, where we would have similar language, but we have to more tailor the, you know, that it isn't that all of the ag districts can do everything the same anymore. It's A is going to be different than A2 and A4. That's the bottom line. There'll still be agriculture, but there'll be some limits. And again, the rezoning standards to maintain the eligibility for farmland preservation in A4. And I think that's about it, wasn't it, Jason, for the first pass through?
Yes.
One I happened to find as I was going through this is in 3395 we're going to need to strike out ag transition A1 from that district. That's on 28 of section 30.
What page?
138 of the packet. Anyway, and then there's but from the ag perspective, the LSLS committee, that's the relatively few things we need to clean up. There, in the recommendations to make those amendments in A, A1, A2, and A4. And my hope is that we can do this and move this portion as an amendment to county board, along with the siting ordinance amendments that we're doing through the Natural Resources Committee. So those two things could be done before we deal with some of the rest of this stuff for the campground and conditional use cleanup we also are envisioning, rather than wait to do it all at once.
So what is Natural Resources doing with the signing? That was under land use before. I mean,
Citing ordinance is chapter 18. That's,
I'm sorry. I thought you said signing.
No, I'm sorry, citing.
Citing. Okay.
Clean up my diction. But yes, citing ordinance.
Put your mask back.
The first, yeah, if I put it on, you can't hear me at all. The Natural Resources Committee will consider the first rough draft of the citing ordinance next week. They had a little head start on us. We'll probably have a draft of this stuff next time, maybe.
I think we should have one next time, yeah.
We'll, at least the first draft, and then it'll be better to deal with when you see more specific language. I get that. But I wanted us to at least spend a little time on it today to get you thinking and looking and wondering about what we should be doing here. And with that, I'll yield the floor.
So really this, this is gonna be a multi-step process. Basically, we're gonna have the ordinance amendments that we'll be able to wrap up first, but then we're gonna have to go and look at rezoning various parts of the county to get owners into the correct districts that they want to be in, for like those that want to be exclusive ag that are now A2, or vice versa, get those exclusive ags into A4 maybe, or A2. So that process in itself will be a big process, trying to rezone potentially almost every township in the county, or at least evaluating it. So that'll be a big process. But this ordinance stuff, I think, is the easier task of that.
The rezoning is gonna have, the landowners are gonna have to approve, plus the towns.
Yeah, so it'll start with the town. It'll be their process, they'll start with it, because, we are gonna wanna support a request that they bring to us. It's not top down, it'll be bottom up from them to, tell us what they want for districts.
I think everybody's pretty aware, like particularly in Roosevelt and Dewey, where Dwayne has been actively promoting this. I should have mentioned this before, that notions of doing this rezoning was strongly supported by our farmer members of the board. They recognize there's places that aren't zoned correctly for what ag should be doing. And they were advocates of us doing it. It's not just it's okay with us, but yes, get right on that.
That is just for zone township, not the unzoned one, though.
True. This is that, and the citing ordinance will apply to activities there, but it's not. It's Wood River is essentially entirely exclusive ag, if you want to say that. As is La Follette and Sand Lake and Blaine. But the other three townships are all so limiting for soil conditions that they're probably not a big issue with them. But there may be some motivation to participate in comprehensive zoning if you're concerned about that. And it may or may not be a big deal. We have a big farm operation up in Blaine too, but they're almost more a ranch than a farm, if you know what I mean. They do periodically have a lot of cattle in a small area, part of the year. But is it a feedlot? Not exactly. That's the other side. It's never going to be perfect, but it hopefully will be better than it was when we're done.
So we'll get a better draft copy and have it on the agenda for us to discuss again next month.
Okay. Next on the agenda, number 8, discuss chapter 30 and 45, timeline for potential update.
So this is on there kind of to deal with text amendment 2101 that was just talked about the moratorium. We have 4 months. I made a list basically of what I think we need, to look at. Again, it's just my list. And then we need to decide too, the committee should decide, there was people talking about wanting to have a subcommittee formed, or is it just something that internally the committee would work on as part of this process? But, when I look at the campground stuff and listen to a lot of the comments, we got to look at the CUP process in general. We have to look at, do we want to have a enumerated list of requirements, like a checklist? We need to evaluate what's the appropriate density. Right now, we allow 10 per acre for campers. Appropriate zoning districts. Right now, we allow them in resident RR districts, A2, but they're not in commercial industrial. We've heard from people that want those flipped, where it should be in residential and A2, and they want them in industrial, commercial. We have a payment for services and or taxes. I think, I don't know what the committee can do at our level for that. I know there would have to be some law changes, I know, for some of those items.
Was that be on the county level, or would that be put on the municipality?
Well, yeah, it's probably going to be on the municipality.
But it can be done.
Yeah, I think so. But that's other things we got to look at. We should look at what neighboring counties are doing with campgrounds. Is this just a Burnett County item? Are other counties experiencing the same things? What are they doing with their campgrounds? What aren't they doing with theirs? People brought up the timeline for submittal of information. We seem to get some people that drop stuff on us the day before the hearing, some update or amendment to their plan. We have what application requirements. We've heard people say that our application is too vague. It's not specific enough. We need to look at the consistency with our comprehensive plan to see what zoning districts or uses should be along with those. We need to look at DAC regulations of campgrounds. People keep bringing up the 8-month thing. Again, that's state law. Whether or not they want to enforce it, that's up to them, I guess. But we should look at, do we want to have something of our own to deal with the 8 months use of a camper? So those are kind of my list of things we need to look at. I guess I'm looking for, I can come up with a list of potential changes or items to look at, but how do we want this process to go forward? With a subcommittee, with just me and a few members of this committee, with me coming up with a whole list of options and bringing them back to the committee? It's kind of up to you guys how you want this to go forward.
But Craig and I supposedly shouldn't have talked about it, but we did. And we don't necessarily want a big subcommittee. Craig mentioned that with the CAFO, that subcommittee was brought up by Chairman Taylor, who would serve on it if there was going to be a subcommittee. And you look at the ones that want to be on the subcommittee, and most of them don't want campgrounds anywhere in Burnett County. So, we got to have a balance there. So, I don't know. I guess we can bring it up to Chairman Taylor before the county board meeting or after.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, did Chairman Taylor intend that public would be on the committee or just providing input?
The CAFO they were on the committee, right?
Correct.
But that was a different.
That was a moratorium.
Yeah, I was going to support what Supervisor Oz said. It was different in that it was a serious long-term educational process of what the issues were that were something relatively unique to us, and we had a citizen, we had appointed staff to member, Dave Ferris, Mr. Grindell, two or three, Dwayne Johnson was both a farmer and a county board supervisor, a couple other farmers who have knowledge of specific issues for that. This one isn't quite the same. I agree with you. I think I could envision something of a subcommittee of the zoning committee to meet with some interested people, to review what we're doing, but I don't think it needs to be as large and complicated as that committee.
I guess I'm wondering why it has to be a committee other than the Land Use Committee as the committee. And I can see that we could have public hearings, public input, et cetera, to gather and listen to it. But then it boils down to, we've been elected as the representatives for the county, that it should be incumbent on us to come up with the laws.
Right. Supervisor Connery, I tend to agree with that. I think the charge of this committee will have to be to meet with other interested parties, you know, as we discuss it, without the 3-minute limitation type of public hearing. So we'd probably have to have a few special meetings just on that were for public input and discussion, but not necessarily a hearing on specific language. You know, I see the public involvement as necessary at a greater extent than we can provide in 3 minutes. But I don't know that we need a committee outside this committee. And again, the chairman of this committee could delegate some members to be on a subcommittee if that made it less cumbersome for everybody.
Yeah, that is Supervisor. I think clarifying, the chairman could clarify what the roles would be. I think some roles would be members of the committee, and others would be, I can't think of the term now. You've got different participants. Ones that are stakeholders, ones that are, I can't remember the terms now. Back in business, they had all these terms, but where we essentially are the decision makers. So I think it's upon us to gather the information, but to gather the people that have an interest and the people who have knowledge, the experts, to provide information. But then we would take that and boil it down. Again, I don't know why it has to be a subgroup of the Land Use Committee.
Chairman Anderson here, naturally, the bigger the committee, the longer it's going to take. So if we can keep it down to something, but I think we need to look at the fact that it's a very real aspect for economic development. So maybe we should have our economic developer director sit in and give us thoughts on what this means to the what's the economic impact of these things to Burnett County. And that would be a big process. And I don't know, it's debatable, depending on who you talk to, whether it's a tourism-related business or not. And we need some input from from the people that, these people are the campground people and everything. They do go out and about some, and it affects it's pretty big. Serving the people of Burnett County, the service industry is a pretty big part. I don't want to, I want to gather thoughts from them, whether they need to be on the committee or not. But if we get some kind of a report or at least some suggestions from them to us.
Supervisor Connery, following up on your recommendation, if we use Jason's list as a basis for this, if that's a subcommittee, let's call it, is going to meet to discuss this and public published meeting, public participation, kind of like what the towns do when they did their comprehensive plan meetings. It was a matter of people discussing what the issues are and what to do to address those issues. Like, getting some input and then going back and crafting some language, which would be our job.
This Supervisor Ogden, the terms I couldn't think of before was stakeholders and content experts. Just as was mentioned earlier, the citizens are bringing a lot of good information, but it's opinion. So, but in my mind, they are stakeholders. They have an interest in what's going on. Whereas, like Supervisor Anderson said, bring in the economic development person. Now that's a content expert. So, but it's still, the committee is the core that makes the decision, but then we need to make sure that the stakeholders are being heard. We need to make sure that we're drawing input, real valid, factual input from the content experts. So I think that part of what we need to do is define who those stakeholders are, who the content experts are, and then make sure that we're providing for their input or getting their input and stuff.
And the thing to keep, Supervisor Connery, the thing to keep in mind is that whatever the group comes up with to develop recommendations and amendments will all have to go through the public hearing process and approved by this committee and recommended to county board. So this is not we're going to hunker down and write some new ordinance and it'll be in effect.
This is what it is.
No, it's going to take significant public input before it gets adopted, no matter what.
Supervisor Anderson again, just to restate, what I've been seeing is people are really welcoming this committee to work towards adjusting the ordinances and things. And so I want to make sure that we continue getting the public support for this and their opinions. But again, the bigger the committee, the longer it's going to take.
Supervisor Payton, I think it's important talking about a subcommittee. I think that we should put a number on that because there could be too many people. And some of these people who are generally, John Best brought up something really, really important today about call on these people for environmental, when we talk about environmental impact or anybody talks about it, we just kind of go away because it's huge, it's long, and it's expensive. They're suggesting that, hey, there's people in the community that can be part of that. We can create our own environmental impact study. I think that's what he was talking about. Anyway, we've got to make sure that everybody, there's a cross section of people in the county, but at the same time, we got to limit the number of people who are going to be sitting there bringing in all this information. We could have too many, is what I'm saying. But you're right, Chuck. What you talked about is the stakeholders and also the what was the term again?
Content experts.
Content expert. Yep.
Yeah, that's Supervisor Hall again. I think that the Land Use Committee, we were elected by our constituents. We were selected by the board to be on this committee, or we were approved. The chairman appointed us, but then we were approved by the board to be on this committee. And again, I don't know why what the content of the subcommittee would be other than us. I don't know who else you would bring into it. It seems like that we are the designated ones to be creating these ordinances and stuff. That's just my opinion.
But that doesn't mean, Supervisor Anderson, that doesn't mean we couldn't, at one of our meetings where we're going to discuss certain aspects, we couldn't invite a couple of the experts to that meeting to get their input.
Well, I think that that's the whole role of what we would be doing. We would be really information gatherers and boiling down. It's a lot of what we as a committee would be doing is listening to the constituents, listening to the stakeholders, the content experts, figuring out who is it that we want to hear from, and even from them figure out, well, we need to hear from more people. But yeah, but we would be drawing in whatever we need to gather information so we can make the decisions.
Well, I still think that we've got to limit the number, but at the same token, we're here to do the business, the monthly business. And I still don't think it's wrong to bring in one or two, like Chuck says, from the outside experts in that particular field, expertise.
Well, I think the hard part would be trying to figure out who are our content experts. Because we hear from a lot of people who claim they're experts and or
Their emotions get in the way.
say they know an expert or something. So you'd almost, I think, have to have a meeting where you're pretty much open it up and just let everybody comment without a 3-minute time limit. I don't know, that's going to be kind of difficult with trying to do it virtually with having people can't unmute everybody at the same time.
Supervisor Conrad, Jason, what you're talking about is the process we went through when we did the lake class type major shoreline zoning overhaul back in the day. We held a number of meetings because committees were smaller then, but both in Burnett and Washburn County, we held meetings periodically discussing the issues, public testimony, some proposed draft language that we put out, amended it, brought it back. You know, it took all summer one year. Just to make a funny story, we did one at the ag station in Schooner, set it up for 100 people to attend. Got about 500. Bruce Moss was on the zoning committee, the land leader. Norm knows who he was for the northern region for DNR. Said, you know, we do statewide statutory amendments with 10 people in a room. You know, but we got through the process. This, I don't think, will be quite that widespread because it won't affect every single shoreline property owner, right? But the point is, you're going to have some meetings like that. And whether we're open to the public or we're doing it by Zoom, we'll just have to have some additional meetings, whether it be the entire committee or a subcommittee, whatever we decide to do. That's the process I see this happening. I don't think there are so many issues that they can't be covered in a couple, 3 of those meetings. So.
But on the other hand, you talk about stakeholders, Chuck. What do we consider the people that call out in the public hearings? They're all stakeholders.
Yep.
And none of them are in favor of it.
Yeah. Well, those are the ones that show up.
Yeah.
The ones that are against anything. The positive people have a heck of a time showing up. I don't care whether it's against an ATV trail or a snowmobile trail or camping ordinance.
How do you differentiate?
But they were against the status quo. They were opposed to what was being proposed. No one was asking them, how would you want it? I mean, some of the people said, it's like, okay, move it into industrial or commercial. So that might be amenable to people. So it's not.
Would you want a campground in the Webster Industrial Park? I don't think so. That's what one of the comments was.
But what we're doing right now with CAFOs is looking at rezoning. Looking at saying, okay, with this situation, we're going to go out and we're going to rezone stuff. What you used to be this, now you're going to be this. So with that in mind, if industrial or commercial, not saying that was going to be the thing, but we could go out and look at rezoning and saying, okay, if you want to do this, this makes sense as far as this over here. So I think we're getting off track and trying to solve things. I'm not sure what we're trying to accomplish right now.
I was just about to, Supervisor Carter, I was about to say we're deviating from what to do to how, and how is for later.
Yeah.
It's not time for that yet.
Supervisor Anderson and I agree with Mr. Oz over here that we are the committee, and I think we can ask for help or ask for input, but I'm not sure we need anybody else on the committee but our land use committee.
Well, so the question then may be, Supervisor Conray, is do we want to encumber our entire land use committee, or do we want to have a subcommittee of it to do this and then bring back the recommendations to the full committee? And I'm fine either way myself. But.
That's actually, I think it's up to Chairman Taylor, because I don't think a committee can appoint a subcommittee.
I think only the board or chairman can appoint a subcommittee.
Good point, good point. We can whisper in his ear, I guess.
Yeah, so it's really, yeah, we can suggest.
One of the things I looked at was, in the chapter 30 that we all put in for the CAFO, there's a lot of stuff in there that pertains to CUPs and campgrounds. So that's something, I made a bunch of marks in mine, and it wasn't for CAFO at all. But it is for the CUPs and whatever.
Right, the process, the CUP process, what we do, right? A lot of our time is spent, regardless of whether it's ag or campgrounds or other, home occupations, all of that. We back up and say, we all sensed back in 2017 when Act 67 happened that it would affect what we might have to do at some point. And I think we have found that, we have to react to the limitations imposed on us by Act 67 to find out how to proceed with CUPs without making them last for like 4 hours at a time. And this is one of the things we need to clean up, but not the only one, obviously.
So we have to spend about four-hour meetings so that next time when we get these CUPs, it can only be a half hour, right?
Like today,
Don't you wish?
I don't think it was all the time, but we can, if everybody knows what the rules are, it'll make it cleaner and smoother.
What are we trying to do right now? What are we trying to settle on?
I'm just trying to figure out how you guys want to have this process go forward. So, I can.
Which one? It seems like Craig has mentioned several, and it sounds like we're not going to do them simultaneously.
Well, I think what Jason's talking about is specific to the moratorium, really. Is how we're going to speak to that. That the other issues are going to be integrated to a lesser extent, right? Whatever we come up with for reviewing the conditional use policies in general are triggered much by the moratorium. It'll be part of that, I think.
By the campground moratorium.
Yes. To a lesser extent by some of the things we'll do with the ag part are also because of recommendations from council on adjusting how we do CUPs as they pertain to agriculture too. But it's all sort of interwoven to an extent,
Right, but I guess my question is, are we doing everything simultaneously? Or are we going to focus on one, get it through? In my sense, it seems like this whole agriculture thing and the CAFO almost takes a priority because there's so much to get done. We need to get that done, and the rest kind of falls on the back burner for a while, and then come along and do this other.
Correct. I think when to get back to the relatively targeted issues in the agriculture amendment process, along with moving the siting ordinance forward, are the first thing to do because that's what we started first. That's why we're a little ahead on that. We'll still be needing to deal with these things with the moratorium, but not until after county board has approved such a moratorium. So we have in other words, we have a month or 6 weeks head start on the ag stuff, and I think we can have that pretty well cleaned up before we start in on the campaign.
So that's what we're saying is the county board meeting, this moratorium will be put on the agenda.
Yeah.
And if it passes, then Chairman Taylor will make the decision on whether it just stays in land use or if he wants a subcommittee, right?
I would assume so.
I think that's right.
Yep, I think that's exactly right.
So I guess there's no point in discussing it a whole lot further.
Right. The only comment I got is, we're looking at chapter 30 for the CAFO, but, make note of things in there on CUPs and everything else. Do we need to change this or do we need to modify it?
I think we will see some of that from the recommendations that we'll bring on ag to the next committee meeting, and those things can carry over into the other stuff. And it won't be all of them, but it'll be much of them.
I don't, everybody talks about, like campgrounds that, we allow, 10 campers per acre, but the state allows 20 campers per acre, so.
We could be more restrictive with the county though, can't we? Can we?
Yes, and we are.
Are there other things with those chapters that we also that we're considering changing at this?
Well,
at the same time, or?
I always have a list of, here I have a marked up copy of different things that I run into throughout the years, where I make notes or comments that we should look at. So there's always things we can look at.
How do you look forward on that? I mean, it sounds.
But then, the more things you open up, then the slower the process goes too. So.
But again, zoning ordinance is a living document. It's always being changed, potentially. But you're right. There are some other things that have come up. They may be so innocuous that we will talk about them and say, yeah, that's common sense. We'll recommend making that amendment too. But again, the high-profile one for now will be the campground issues.
I'm wondering if we even want to think about those other things, if it'll just get in the way.
No, I think some of them, they're not going to be complicated. If they are, and we decided we put it off, then.
Okay, any other comments or discussion? Next, we'll move on. 9, discuss future meeting locations and format. Since I don't know when, we've had, the buildings have been closed or whatever, and, we've had the meetings like we do today. But in the future, who knows what's going to happen? But I know Jason sent an email to Mr. Ahalt and myself, and how we want to do the April one. Does the building open up March 31st?
April 1st. We're closed.
Okay.
March 31st.
But, for April meeting, which is
April 2nd.
April 2nd?
6.
Or 6, yeah.
You want to continue having meetings like we have been, or you want to take a chance, or what? April 6th.
What is the legal requirement for a public hearing? I imagine these are acceptable now, but can we restrict it? Can we close the building? Or can we close them? Well, actually, I think it says somewhere the door has to be open.
Well, I think the thing we're going to struggle with is, we've got 2 big items that are going to be on the April meeting. So how do you, if we want to open it back up, how do you maintain social distancing and follow all those guidelines that even if the building's open, we still are supposed to follow those other guidelines that are in place? How do you do that with 100 people?
Oh, April's going to be nice, they can sit outside.
Sit outside?
Okay, I wonder if you can limit it to the number of people. To say if it's going to be more than this, then we will.
I don't know how you can limit it, then it's not public.
No. I'm not saying that you limit it, that you say if it's going to be more than X, it will only be online.
How are you going to know that?
Well, because people have to sign up.
But we have to notice the meeting 3 weeks ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
So do we want to broadcast that it's open, possibly open? That's the hard part here with trying to figure out, we have to notice it so far in advance, and we have to make a decision.
Last year in June or July or whenever it was, we had it at the highway shop, which, possibly could be it, but are we going to have a snowstorm? And the trucks are going to be parked in there and we can't, have it open, so.
We certainly can get a snowstorm in early April. It's happened before.
Well, can we open the building to meetings less than a certain size?
Everybody's looking at Wanda.
So when we do reopen the building, we'll be able to have, we'll be able to open this curtain again, have the lounge area open for it, but it will be a limited number of in-person seats available. After that, those we'll just have to listen to Zoom or the conference call, however we're possibly running the meeting. There again, we're going to be still following all the CDC guidelines for our social distancing. So with that in place, it'll go back to how we did, last summer when the building was kind of open, but we still had to follow those guidelines. So we'll have to try to manage that as best as possible. That works for almost every committee meeting that we have. And county board, except land use. So with that in mind, we did discuss, several of us from different offices discussed how we would be able to manage and go forward with the land use meetings. We talked about the April issue with the highway department because we probably, we cannot count on the weather to allow us to use the highway in April. After that, we can probably do that and we can go back to the big open building forum where everyone can come in person for these meetings. But the April one, when we talked about it, our best thought to be able to still do the social distancing and still allow everyone to participate in it was going to still run it with the YouTube and the conference call and signing up for the meeting and having it in that respect. Otherwise, we're not sure how we would possibly still allow everyone to be able to participate because we will not have the room for people. We all know that from our meetings from previous meetings.
Well, everyone is participating now.
Everybody that wants to. Everyone that wants to participate.
Correct. Yeah. But if we were to eliminate this or open the building or have only so many people, can come in, we really can't do that and still allow everyone to participate. And there again, with those timelines and all the publications that have to happen so early, we don't have an awareness. I mean, in our minds, obviously, when it's going to be a campground issue, we're going to have just a humongous turnout again of people, whether it's online or in person.
And we legally say that we don't know how much participation we will have, but we have an expectation of a high level of participation. Therefore, the meeting will only be open to telephone or video.
We can still run the meeting in fashion that as long as everyone can participate in the public hearing, that's legal, as we have been doing it.
But can we say that's the only way you can participate? Anyone can participate, but it has to be through phone because we don't know, if we have an agenda where we know it's not going to be many people.
And that's pretty much what's posted on with all of the information that's on the agendas currently for us holding the meetings this way. That's pretty much a summary of the language that says. Participation will only be done through such and such measures, viewing through such and such, blah, blah, blah. So
but once the building's open, we're doing it now because the building's closed. Right?
Correct.
But it's also because of COVID-19.
Okay.
And because of that issue, obviously everyone is having to operate in a little different fashion, whether we open the building doors again or not. In a sense, the doors are closed, but we still make appointments for public to come in. We just have to continue to do what we can do to follow all the guidelines and the rules and still allow the public to participate.
I would respectfully submit that if we know we're going, or we expect to have a big crowd, we just shut it down.
Can we legally, if the building is going to be open, can we legally say we're still not going to have any public speaking at the building. It all has to be via Zoom? Or once the building gets open, we can't limit it?
We're gonna get opinion from, Dave Grindell, our attorney, to make sure that that is, that that's legal and still okay to do. There may be a little,
My suggestion is, because it's so close to the cutoff date that we don't know what's gonna happen, and because we don't know what's gonna happen with the weather and that kind of thing, that we should stick with if we can say the only participation will be by the Zoom.
By remote
Access.
and I believe, as far as I understand, emails we get, conversation in the community and whatnot, people have been happy with the way things have run. So I don't hear any negativity out there about the not being able to participate in person. Right up front, before we held meetings, we got a little bit of conversation from persons or comments from persons where, well, I want to see my face and their expressions and whatever. But with us doing the YouTube video feed and everything, I believe people have been very, very satisfied and happy with how we've been able to take care of this.
Well, not only that, but I think that they're able to hear better because they're in their own location. When we were out at remote locations like that, even though we had nice speakers and everything, if the speaker wasn't going their way, they couldn't hear.
It gets tougher, and then also persons have been very pleased in the fact that, a lot of these participants and public speakers are, travel a distance to come and take off work and all of that. And I've also had emails where that's been appreciated, the fact that it works easier for them and they still get to participate.
That's my suggestion. If it's legally possible to limit it to this.
And we will verify that with our county attorney for that piece, but if indeed that's my suggested way to still operate for April and for us to be able to run it in a better fashion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
For the convenience and benefit of the public, would it be possible that for the indefinite future, the public we could have blended meetings or hybrid meetings where we have the meetings in person and then the public would have the opportunity also to participate through the telephone system, and then also have the Zoom if we want to have that as well. Could we do all of those things rather than either or?
Well,
that's what we're doing.
No, I think he's saying have people here in person and virtual.
Oh.
Well, the difficulty is going to be if you have 30 people show up at the door and they all think they're going to be the ones to sit here in person. 10 minutes before the meeting starts. And we say, nope, we're at capacity, go somewhere else to try to participate. I don't know how you handle that
That's
scenario.
kind of an unfair situation put out to the public also. I feel like we need to have a plan in place and what way we're going to run it for sure in April and or the future meetings, and make sure that the public is well aware of that so there aren't any surprises anywhere, because we do not care to make a difficult situation for anyone either, if that were to happen,
How, right now, on the list of people, how do you determine order? Is it just first come, first served?
The order comes in through their sign up, when they go online and sign up.
So it's like a timestamp or something?
It is in the sense though that it does put in order and actually uses the telephone number to set the order, which we just found out is the exact way that it does yesterday from IT, but it does, that's how they are. So it is a random, but by telephone. So we're not doing any more of the, I want to be here and I want to be here, and behind that one, and everything that, we tried that because we wanted to be able to accommodate. Didn't work so well, so it's just in that order that it comes in and it sorts it.
So it's really first come, first served.
No, it's totally not. It puts it in, it gradually puts it in order of telephone number, and then
One is just listen, and one is talk, right?
No, there's no, they don't have to sign up to listen.
No, you can just listen through the conference call without actually signing up online to speak.
If you're gonna speak, you gotta sign up.
Yeah. And there's more than one phone?
There's the conference call number which you are given if you sign up to speak. There's the Zoom audio and or visual if you want to just listen to the meeting without speaking. We've had it separated because we have the audio and stuff through the conference call line and sign up is way more clear, and we can control it better.
What's the latest they can sign up to talk?
This morning was the last one that came in, 8:30? Yeah. Right about 8:30.
Okay.
So
So everyone coming to the meeting would be after the ones that have signed up, right? Because they would sign up here.
oh, well, they would sign up, but who's to say that those persons then that even signed up online wouldn't travel here to be able to do it in person, even though they signed up? As far as.
Well, but you would go down the list, starting with the people who signed up on the phone. And if their name gets called, they get to talk if they're here. And once these are done, then you would go with the people who signed up here.
You weren't talking about people in person.
No, I was strictly talking about persons when we do it
But
online.
Brent is proposing that we have a mix. And it's like, in my mind, how would you fairly listen to them? Seems like first come, first served. It's like
Well,
they would be last.
With that sense, it probably would be, but we still circle right back around to the original problem with the quantity of persons coming to the building, expecting to be able to be in person, and we only have a very, very limited number of chairs while we are still social distancing. So
We just need to be clear, and that's a risk they take.
it's the risk they take, and then it is.
So a lot more work on the
Makes
staff
for
part.
complications and
I
makes for
understand.
unhappy people, and I just feel it's easier to have a laid out plan in advance that everyone understands
Yeah.
and.
And for now, that makes sense to do one way or the other. However, I believe our world is changing.
When we
And
move.
going down the road, if we will have a
Down
plan.
the road,
Yeah.
when we don't have to social distance and the allowable, I don't foresee us going backwards with not having the availability as such. I don't see us going backwards. People are used to having this, electronic presence and ability to attend meetings and stuff now. I don't see this changing. I see it, us holding to this and then, graduating the in-person back in. Where, as you said, yes, I agree with that will probably be our future, Chuck. Yep.
Supervisor Carter, yeah, I think you're exactly right. The people should be able to continue to opt in even when we get back to in-person. The thing we cannot do is exclude anybody because we allowed the applicant in but not the opponent, that kind of thing, or will be.
Oh, absolutely, and yes, we'll, again, check in with Dave, see what the legalities are for sure, once the building opens, so we can still run that. There again, it's your decision as how you want us to try to run the meeting. This one in April especially, and otherwise, like you said, in the future, I don't see this piece going away. I see this piece entailed and adding in the in-person and then figuring out a way to make sure that's all runs smoothly and fairly with participation.
We're not for certain that the building's gonna be open.
Well, at this moment, we are. We are
But the
planning.
governor may change it.
Right. At this moment, we are planning that it will be open. That's the other thing. With the uncertainty day to day right now in our world, we need to be able to plan because of the publications that have to go out 3 weeks before a meeting. We need to make sure that our plan would entail what we would be able to do regardless of whether the building then ends up staying closed or does open. This works for either way. We're unable to make that huge change in any type of short notice. So we really need to, even though we're supposed to be open, we need to make sure that our plan would accommodate for either or.
On this here, where it says, get Burnett County Government Center, with the Governor's Order 90, down where it says, at this time, due to closure of the building, just scratch off that due to the closure of the building.
Correct. We would be revamping the verbiage on the agenda a little bit as we have with each different order and stuff that's come down from the state.
I was at a meeting a month ago with other counties were there, and some of them said, no, they didn't close their building, or they closed it for a short time. I said, well, how do you, if they're open, how do you hold public meetings? We don't have any.
Yes, it's a huge array all across the state that they have either tried to accommodate or just plain and simple haven't been holding these meetings.
That would work
It's all
for me.
over the board. Yeah.
But you know what would happen then, once we open back up the meetings, you'd have like 10 weeks straight of meetings every
No
day.
different than what we've been having.
Well, yeah.
Okay, I think we're probably staying the way we're doing right now. That's the easiest way for the committee, and I think it's the easiest way for the public right now.
And I'll make sure to get an opinion on that and then talk to you, Norm.
Okay. Okay, moving on. Land services, zoning and property information.
Get it open here on my iPad real quick. So,
when is the county board meeting this month?
It is.
18th?
Well, I think it's the 24th.
I gotta get my calendar up.
18th, the third Monday is the 15th.
Yeah, 18th. It is the third Thursday, or yes, the third Thursday.
Craig, you'll have to report to the county board because I'm going to be in Marshfield for a 3-day meeting.
Alrighty then.
all right, so the land services reports are in there. Staff reports are in there. I do have the budget report. It's early in the year. What is a little bit surprising and has me slightly worried is our revenue already for the year to date, 24,000, and then when I look at year to date last year, 12,000 at this point. So our permit numbers again are up. When I look back at historic January, February permit issuance, we're double what we usually are. Again, COVID messed everything up. So our permit numbers were way up last year, so I don't know if we're gonna be up the whole year. You know, lumber prices are going up like crazy too. But that doesn't seem to be slowing things down unless people are trying to get their permits and lock in prices, and then will things slow down in the future? You know, I don't know.
That's what I've heard through Danny Quinn, says that people are trying to get going on their, locking down with their contractors before the prices of lumber goes more.
Yep. So all to be, figured out, I guess, as time goes on. Website statistics are in there. Again, you'll see we're about 300 users per weekday on the GIS site, about 100 per day on the weekend. I put in there what countries we've had using our site for the last 30 days or so. You see those in there. And then I also put another report in there, which is how users are getting to our GIS website. So you'll see about, I'm gonna look here at the percentages. 76% roughly are going a direct click on our GIS website, so that I'm assuming that means I have it saved on their desktop or something like that, where they're going right to it. 16% are doing a Google search for it, and then you start getting different referrals from like BurnettCounty.com. I'm assuming that's from our homepage. You click GIS on there. So just thought it was neat that roughly 3/4 of our users have it locked in that they go directly to that site with no referrals. Land use, Land Services Department report. There's the permit numbers already for the year to date. Staff report is in there as well. That's about it. If you have any questions.
Let's see. And it's on the second
We're
person staff.
gonna post it again here soon. Yep.
Question I have. What is the earliest, Wanda, that we can get posted on our PDFs for land use? Because we didn't get it this month until Friday.
Okay, it was put in, it was already all set, put in on Wednesday. I didn't realize there was a glitch. It didn't post to there. The first email I got from someone that tried to look into it, which was maybe yourself, that was gonna open it up, whoever did, I immediately checked and I reposted and it came up and it came through. So it's done, it's whatever, there once in a while is a glitch. If someone looks into their packet to open it up in a timely manner when it should be there and you don't see it, just shoot me an email and I'll double check and make sure that everything is good.
I'm saying, what is the earliest we could get it?
We normally, real good to do with this committee and getting everything and having it that 6 day before, which would have been posted on Wednesday, which it was. Okay. And then the meeting is the next Tuesday. Jason's still gathering all of the
I know, but if we get
documents.
If we get a lot of them, it still isn't much time for us to go out and field check what we want to.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to, Jason, maybe you have a suggestion how they'll, now that they're going to be field checking things,
well,
how they can be aware from the public hearing notice.
Yeah, I mean, you get the public hearing notice, but you won't have, if you're looking for comments from people.
No, I ain't looking for, I'm looking to go out and look at, you know.
Well, the public hearing notice is 3 weeks ahead of time.
3 weeks prior, and you all get that.
But that isn't always enough information to be able to.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Property.
Doesn't give us a map and everything else to look at.
Or addresses, sometimes you gotta figure it out by
staff recommendations.
Well, the staff recommendations, I don't get done till right before the hearing, but right before that 6 day cutoff, because I'm trying to get all the feedback that I hear from people to write my staff recommendations. You know, I could write the staff recommendations tomorrow for next month's meeting, but then it wouldn't have any input. Same thing. So, I mean, are you just looking for like a preliminary copy?
Just so that I can go out and check that.
Yeah.
You know.
What I just would have to do then is just scan them in and just email them.
I don't know which one it was. It was on an email from you on land use, and you told me to go in and you can look on there to pull up what it is.
Yeah.
And that's, I assume, was what public is getting, because we're getting comments from the public, you know, a week ahead of when we get on the PDF.
They're probably taking the information from the public hearing notice, which is published 3 weeks or prior to a meeting. And with the information that's right on there, you can go on our website and you can pull up properties and go and see them. And
Are you talking about properties, Norm, or this last case with this text thing?
He's saying the packet. So what he did is he Wanda uploaded the packet, you couldn't find it, or it wasn't where it was supposed to be, you emailed us. I emailed you where the public goes and finds that
Yeah, that's
stuff. But that Wanda does that at the same time that she does the packets for you guys.
Right.
Because that's the same information. It's just in 2 spots.
so if you ever, for some reason, it didn't upload into your iPad, you always have the same availability and packet that you get to look at right on our Burnett County website. The packet is also posted. That has always been.
But it's never earlier. They're both done at the same time.
That's what I did this time.
Yes. And that's been a known fact for, years. That's how it's been for years.
This is what you said.
Meeting and agendas, and then under documents.
When you send the agenda, it's got the public notices on there, and it's got what that public notice is and where it is.
Right.
And usually who the name and the location.
Right, that's really clearly, that gives you the time to be able to actually access.
With a hyperlink.
Jason, we can work at getting some little better prelim thing, maybe with something to just shoot out to the committee so that you could do on-site stuff a little earlier.
Yeah, I think that's what Norm's asking for. He didn't have enough information to go to the site.
Well, what I just need to do is when the cutoff comes in for the application deadline, a couple days after that, I should just scan in the first few pages of the application with the map and then email it to you guys, and then you would have, a prelim kind of copy of it.
Super.
Just to get you started.
Yeah.
Even with this one, just full chapter 30 on Friday. To look at it, till today.
Well, this was a small packet. It was only 200. It's only like 211 pages. You guys should have breezed through this one.
Slow reader.
No problem.
Another word on that is just for everyone's knowledge and a reminder that all of that is right on our website also under our codification, our code. So you can access like your chapter 30 and 45 and all that. You can go right online and you can go right in and read that at any time, even before packet.
Chapter 30.
Yeah, even before any packet information, when you're looking at anything like that, any of our ordinances, all of that's available there. And if anyone does not know how to get to it or know where that is, just holler at one of us and we'll show you after the meeting so that you have an awareness of you're looking for anything.
I do know how to navigate a little bit more than Gene Olson, but just that little bit is about all I got.
Well, we'll help you, Norm, just ask, because a lot of this stuff is available to you 24/7 online on our website, not just when you get the pack, with the ordinances and different things like that.
I can find properties if there is an address. When I run into problems, I know how to break down quarters in the southwest corner, the northeast corner, the southwest quarter. I can do that. It's when it ends up with the subdivision of the, Norm Bickford division of it's like, I have no clue where that is.
We can also show you, Chuck, real quick, how to do it when you have a name, because a lot of things there's a name in the public hearing notices and stuff. We can show you quick how to.
You can do a search by owner name.
Search by name, and then you can bring up the map and everything that way, really easy too. So we can show anyone like that, holler at Jason or his staff or us, and we'll show you how to do that. It's
problem.
I know how to search with owner's name, so.
Problem is some of these, like today, is Whiskey River on behalf of secluded land.
Yeah.
The Whiskey River owns like 200 parcels.
We've had some cases where it was contingent on purchase, so they didn't even own it.
Yeah. Things like that will.
There's always scenarios where it doesn't work. Like
Okay.
we think it should.
Future agenda items.
So we have, so far, we have 4 conditional use permits in our office. The deadline isn't until Friday for the cutoff.
What are the?
2 of them are just a 3-year camper for private people. Those ones shouldn't be too bad. The other 2 are campgrounds. Mr. Chelmo, campground on Devil's Lake, so the one on the north side of A, he's reapplied. Mr. Chelmo, campground on the south side of County Road A on the Yellow River down there. So he applied for that one as well. That one we haven't heard for. So those are the 2 campgrounds that we have already.
You have one on Connors Lake?
Not as of this morning, I didn't.
Town of Oakland mentioned that there was somebody with some land on the northwest corner of Connors Lake.
Nothing yet, but I guess we have until Friday, so. And then we'll have.
Well, there was also another one, when I was out in looking at one of these, there was another one that some people out there mentioned out by Lipsy Pines out there somewhere. That part of the county.
I know there's one on Dongola going in, but.
That's the one.
That one's unzoned, so they can do.
And Lake, yeah.
They can do whatever they want pretty much there.
That's the one.
Yeah. And then we'll go through and get better draft for the LSLS items, so the ag items, we'll get a better draft copy of that. And then I guess on the campground moratorium, we have to kind of wait to see what county board, if they approve the moratorium, and then we'll figure out next steps on that at the April meeting.
Just an update, Jason. I don't know if the rest of the committee members know, but Spokane, just an update on this. We denied it, but.
Yes, so the Spokane one, that was denied by this committee. He's filed an appeal directly to circuit court. So he's not trying to go to the Board of Adjustment. He's just going directly to circuit court.
Is that one we turned down twice?
Yes.
Yes, on Highway 70, kind of between Viola and Big Sing. Yep.
So that goes to our circuit court?
Starts with our circuit court, yep.
No other future agenda items? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Supervisor Anderson. Second by Supervisor Conrad. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.